Hello, everyone. It's very nice to be here and to know that people actually care about data management because that's a very important part of any research. To quote Lynn from yesterday, data is our friend indeed, and we must pay attention to it because we can put all our time and money into modeling, collecting, implementation data, designing a study, designing a protocol, but unless we collect good, clean data, we'll have no result to show for it. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to briefly go over what data management is, goals and objectives, the clinical trial life cycle, and how data flow fits into it. We're going to talk about that data management role within a trial, case report forms, six core stages of the data management process. We're going to talk a little bit about preparing data for analysis and about database lock and archival. So let's just take a very brief look at the data management definition. It's a process that involves planning, collecting, cleaning, storing, protecting, and delivering research study data. And the ultimate goal of it is to have a complete, accurate, and data set that's ready for statistical analysis, regulatory submission, or secondary use. And lately, more and more so, especially in many studies, we have to also prepare the data for submissions into different repositories so it could be reused by other researchers. So as I said, the core function of data management is to ensure that that is accurate, clean, and complete. So it's a system basically that bridges the clinical and research activities that bring us into a data set that's ready for statistical analysis and in a trustworthy data set. So as we just said, the objectives of a good data manager is to collect all data specified in the study protocol, support all the data monitoring activities, minimize errors and missing data, and to create a nice, clean locked database in a timely manner. And of course, data management has impact not just on the statistical analysis, but other important factors as well, such as patient safety. When you have a good data management system, you're able to quickly identify any adverse events or find things in your data that may affect patient safety. It also ensures study validity. You can draw correct conclusions from the study and also meet the regulatory requirements, such as FDA requirements, GDRP, or HIPAA. So what does the data flow within a trial look like? At first, as we know, there's an idea that comes up, and the study is designed, the research protocol is finalized and approved. And then it's nice when you're able to sit down with the actual data managers and talk about what your database is going to look like, what you're going to capture, and then you create a good data management plan. And that all starts way before your first patient is enrolled in a study. Then you start enrolling, then you create your CRF form, your case report forms, and start enrolling patients and start your data collection process. As we collect the data, we continuously do data cleaning and querying to make sure that the data that we collect are nice and clean. Then we still do final cleaning and query resolution at the very end. And only after that, we lock the database and prepare the data sets for analysis. So those steps 3, 4, and 5 are really the most intensive during the trial or during any research study in terms of data collection and data management. So just to talk a little bit about that case report forms, and by case report forms, we mean pretty much anything. We use it interchangeably with questionnaires, worksheets, measures, data collection instruments. And it's a tool that we use to collect any type of data. And it's not just questionnaires or interview forms, any type of implementation science data, any data that comes from other sources such as medical charts, that all can be part of a case report form. So case report forms can be on paper or electronic. And in a second, we'll talk about advantages and disadvantages of each. And mostly people now prefer, obviously, to use electronic case report forms, even though there are some limitations to that as well. So some principles of the good CRF design, the questions need to be very clear. Otherwise, our data is ambiguous, and then we can't draw the right conclusions. And we're not going to be able to answer the questions that we want. We want to be concise, because how many times do we say that, oh, this is our primary outcome, this is our secondary outcome, but then let's collect 20 other forms because it just may be nice to have for later. Well, as data managers, we believe that actually less is more. And when you start burdening a study participant with 100 questionnaires, by the time you get to number 20, they really don't want to answer any more questions. And that leads to attrition of the participants, also to poor data, because people just sit there and basically say, yeah to every question. And that's how we know that this data is no longer accurate. And the worst part is sometimes they just if they do an online questionnaire, they just close the questionnaire in the middle. And basically you have no data. Instead of collecting good 20 forms, you basically lost data on pretty much a whole visit or a whole data collection set. So the question should flow logically on the form, and you have to be really mindful of that, especially when you collect sensitive data. For instance, if you collect data on opioid use or HIV, you don't want to jump into your data collection by asking a person the first question, do you have HIV? Or how many times have you used opioids in the past week? Your data, your CRF has to really flow in the sense that as you were doing a patient interview, like you have to sit down and say, well, I'm going to ask about maybe like their demographics, some other stuff. And then when they feel comfortable, that's when you really get into the gist of things. And it's good to have some standardizations for the instruments. So we try to standardize some of the instruments as much as possible, because it makes it very easy to analyze the data later. For example, if you have a standard demographics form, you can take that form and you can just use it in different studies. And then later, when you prepare your table 1, if you were in our session, just the other day, we showed everybody the table 1 that actually Luke was also talking about during the writing of your paper. There's actually software that prepares table 1 for you very nicely. And if all your variables are named the same from one study to another, you can just plug that function in and the table 1 comes up nicely. So as I said, electronic versus paper case report forms. Electronic forms do have certain advantages. You can do real-time data entry. You can do real-time edit checks, meaning that they fire right for you. If you enter somebody's age as 900, it's going to tell you the ages are range, doesn't look right. If you enter somebody's, somebody's blood levels or something that don't look right, it's going to just come up and give you like a red flag and say, this is not correct, check your data. So it also electronically, you can have a built-in audit trails, which is very nice to say who entered data, when. If somebody deletes something, you can go back and check why and how they deleted it. And it saves the time on data entry. Basically, you don't have to type the data in from your paper into a database. But paper CRFs still have their own advantages. We're doing currently one of the studies in Burkina Faso in Africa, and on malaria. There is no internet connection in the remote areas. So there's no way to collect that data on electronically right away when people go out into the field and collect data on mosquitoes. So they have to rely on paper, they come back to their labs, and that's when they enter the data into the database. Also, there's no need for multiple computers or tablets because sometimes we don't have those resources. And of course, training sometimes in change management is easier, because when you change your paper, any questions on your paper form, you just print out the new form and it's done. When you do that electronically, you have to make changes in the database while making sure that you're not losing the old data while you're making changes to the form and to collect the new data. And of course, there's one more perk with the paper forms. If you feel you look at your data and you see, this does not look right, you can go back to that paper form and see, did we really enter that correctly? There's no such thing. Once you enter with the electronic CRF, when the data is in, there's no way to go back and find out what happened. So just a quick example of a good and a not such good form design. Say we're collecting medication adherence case report form. So you just want to ask, what's your medication status? Well, if they have to type it in, could be anything. Does it mean they're taking it, stopped, never took? It's much better to ask, was the study medication taken today? Yes, no, not applicable. And that's clear and produces nice analyzable data that's already coded for you. You don't have to go back and recode anything. So if we don't follow the good CRF design, this is where we end up. So as we just to summarize, the good CRF translates protocol endpoints into collectible data fields. Good design reduces missing data. It's protocol driven. We try to reuse and standardize forms. It follows a logical flow that mirrors the patient visit schedule. We minimize free text as much as possible. We built in edit checks, skip logic to the questions, and we make them user-friendly for the site personnel. How many CRFs or which CRFs should you include in your research study? Of course, it all depends on what you're studying. Clinical trials, especially trials that are regulated by any kind of regulatory agencies such as FDA, are much more rigorous, and you have to include a lot of safety forms. For other studies, it's not as necessary, but this is a set of forms that we usually include, and of course, as applicable. Not all studies have randomization, not all the studies need a physical exam, but these are usually the forms that we pretty much standardized up until now, and we find it very convenient to just keep reusing them. Now that we've talked about the CRFs, let's talk a little bit about the software. What are we going to use for data management? So there are very distinct differences between data management software and data analysis software. So the purpose of data management software is for data collection, storage, organization, quality control, security, and access control. By access control, what I mean is that if you have a blinded clinician or somebody blinded on your study, you can give certain access to certain forms that others would not be able to access. So if I have a blinded clinician, I'm not going to give him access to the randomization form, for example, and he's only able to access the data that he needs to complete his clinical forms. Some examples of the data management software, RedCap, which I'll show you a little bit of it later. Qualtrics, which is great for questionnaires. Metadata Rave, that's used a lot by the pharmaceutical companies, and Oracle Clinical is another one. So for data analysis software, that's a little probably self-explanatory as well. We use it for statistical analysis, data mining, data visualization, reporting, and predictive modeling. Well, some examples are R, SAS, SPSS data, and there's a whole slew of others. Those we just said. I hate to disappoint everyone. Excel was not on any of those lists because it's not really a data management tool. And I know we all love using Excel. It's definitely better than collecting data on napkins. That's definite for sure. But still, it has quite a bit of limitations. So you don't have the audit trail functionality. It's pretty easy to click on the space bar and delete the data from a cell and never notice that. There are no automated checks. It doesn't, when you enter data into Excel, it doesn't tell you, oh, your date of birth was 1800, and that doesn't look right. And you can give people user rights to certain parts of different forms. And also, it's very inefficient for large data sets. Those spreadsheets can get very, very messy, very, very fast. So hopefully that was something that I convinced you maybe to start moving away from Excel at some point, especially if we're going to tell you something else. We're going to show you something that you can also use for free. So here's some step-by-step journey to a clean database. And this is a very highly collaborative process. It starts, as I said, way before the first patient is enrolled in the study. And it involves everybody from the PI to study team to data managers, statisticians. It's like a full cycle of everybody who is involved in the study. So first, we sit down. We like to sit down. We read the protocol. We sit down with the study team. We design a database and the specifications. It's the most important thing when you design your database is that it works for the study team and not the study team works for the database. So the database has to follow the study flow. Because if they tell me, tell me what to collect, I say, no, you tell me what you're gonna collect and how you want to collect it. And then we're gonna design a system for you that will help you actually collect the data. That maybe we're gonna build a dashboard that's gonna give you reminders that this patient is due for their visit. Or if something is not collected, you can run a report, a weekly report that will remind you later, that will tell you these study participants did not complete certain questionnaires. So, but before we get to that stage, we design a database, we do a lot of testing and user acceptance testing. Then we go into data capture and entry. Then while we also do the tracking of the forms and processing, data cleaning, validation, and finally database lock and export. And that's when it goes over to the statistician. So as I said, database design is determined by the study design and setup. That's what the most important thing is. We build it in a test environment, and we built in all those edit checks that would fire and appear right at the time of data entry. So we don't have to go back and do so we try to minimize the cleaning at the end. We try to do as much validation as possible at the time of data entry. And then we design a data management plan. It's basically a description and a guide of all of our data management activities. So somebody who just joins the study can easily go through it and find out what's happening. So UAT, user acceptance testing. And when I say measure twice and cut once, I literally mean it. So the first measure is are the people who design a database are the ones who test it. And then we meet with the study team, we show them how the database works, and we ask them to put the fake data. And what we do, we have this thing when we say, try to break the system. Try to put really weird data into it, and it really should stop you from that. And if it does, that means we should go back and fix things or adjust things. It's impossible to check for everything, but we try to check for as much things as possible. So the purpose, again, is to find bugs that are built in a database, ensure that all CRFs are present and correct, and to test all the validation checks. So oftentimes, we build our own data, the researchers build their own databases. They don't have a data management team to rely on. And if you do that, you still can test the database yourself by putting in some data and making sure it works. But I really encourage you, when you do that, to have a friend or somebody else also try to put in data, because when you work on something for a very long time, you try to overlook things. But when somebody looks at it with a fresh set of eyes, they can easily find things that may not work, especially when you create patient-facing surveys. Send another person that survey and see if they are able to complete it without any errors. So when we ask the study team to test the database, we have them follow the script, certain testing script, enter some dummy data, both correct and incorrect, and see if the system behaves as expected. So now we've tested our database. We moved it into production, or as we say, we went live. So we have direct data into the electronic data system. It's usually entered by the study team, the site coordinator, or participants sometimes complete online questionnaires, and all the data is basically mapped all in one place on a server. If your source of data is paper, then it's transcribed and entered obviously from paper into the database. And it could be anything. It could be medical charts, questionnaires, lab reports. And sometimes we can even import data from certain medical devices or wearable devices or electronic health records straight into the database. So what we're really trying the main goal is to get accurate data. So as we start collecting our data and it's being entered, we want to know what we have, what we don't have, what's been collected, what hasn't. So we always develop reports. We always sit down with the study team or the PI and we say, what is it that you're going to be looking for? What's really paramount for you to have at the end. Obviously, we want to report anything that's in the primary or secondary outcomes, whether we have those missing, because if we don't have those, then we really can't report or write or create or run our data analysis. So we want to be able to do all of that as much as possible. How much is missing? Could we go back and kind of fill in the missing holes, or do we have to live with what we've got? And obviously, while data is our friend, the perfect data is really an imaginary friend, as we all know. So there are certain steps in finding and fixing errors, and it's a very iterative process. And we found that actually the site, when we work with various sites, they find this process very, very helpful. So after the data are entered, we run reports and we send queries to the sites. They usually review those reports and they respond. And sometimes they fix the data on their end. Sometimes they ask us to fix certain things. Then we confirm whether the data or we correct things. And then it goes back to make sure that everything is correct. The best way to do this is to actually do this as fast, very regularly, almost depending on the rate of your data collection. Sometimes we do it bi-weekly, sometimes we do it monthly, because it's much easier to capture something that was missing or wrong maybe a week or two later, rather than going back 2 years and saying, what did we mean by this? And again, if we don't follow this process, as we say, garbage in, garbage out. Now, hopefully we've done our work well. We've collected all of our data. We did all the cleaning that we were supposed to do, and we are ready for the next step. So first we do a soft lock, or what we actually call a database freeze. We take away access, and we make sure we ask everybody, did you finish all your data entry, data collection? We freeze, we take away access from everybody. People can just have their read-only access to the data set, but they can't make any more changes or enter any new data. And this is where the problem with Excel comes in, if you're using Excel. I'm working on a study, I collected data, I sent the Excel file to my colleague. I found a mistake in my data. I went back, I checked, I changed something, but I forgot to tell my colleague that I changed that. We're working now on 2 different data sets. So this is why we like to have the data lock, which is really possible with a good database. And then after we run some more additional data checks, make sure everything is nice and clean. We actually, what I did, what I should have mentioned, when we prepare the database, one of the other things we do before we go live, we extract the fake data that was entered, we give it to the statistician. And we say, please make sure, review the data and make sure that everything that's in here is organized the way you're going to be able to analyze the data, and all your outcomes are there. Because if the primary and secondary outcomes or the main things are not captured, we want to be able to fix that before we go live. So once the database is finally locked, we export it, give it for statistical analysis. Now, let's talk a little bit about the database that we all love and used in many corners of this world. It's called REDCap. It's the Research Electronic Data Capture System. So it's used at almost 8,000 institutions around the world, 163 countries. I looked it up last night, and it is used in Georgia. So what is REDCap? It's web-based software used to create and manage research databases and participant surveys. It's developed as a tool to help researchers collect and manage data effectively and responsibly. The best part, it can be, you don't need a programmer or anybody to create your database. There's a whole bunch of features. I'm not going to read them all, but you can build everything yourself. You don't need a programmer to do it. It's fast and flexible. You can create your forms, customize your forms, change them later. You just have to be careful not to orphan or delete your data that's been already collected. But it even actually the REDCap actually has those checks. When you try to change your form after you started collecting data, it's going to actually tell you, you're going to, before you make all these changes, make sure it may change some of your data, or lose some of your data. So make sure you account for that. It has tons of advanced features. it has query resolution where if you have a study monitor, somebody who wants to check your data, they can actually check the paper form against the electronic record and say, oh, this doesn't match. So what they do, they have like this little tag where they click and they issue a query to the person who did the data entry and say, we see discrepancy, can you please check? An email and alert goes to the person says, oh, this is different, and they actually track the whole query resolution process, which is absolutely wonderful. So some more features. It's diverse, flexible. You can do online surveys. The best part, what I love about RedCap is that you can have an interview with a participant where you enter the data. Then you can send a link to a participant to do their own online survey, and you can capture some electronic record from medical chart, and it's all going to go into the same participant's record. I don't have to create multiple worksheets or multiple files. So on top of that, custom reporting, you can cut and dice and slice your data any way you want. If I want just demographics or certain things, I can extract that today, or tomorrow I need some other data, or you can just extract all the data at once. And you can export data into many different formats. Even more RedCap features. So it's secure and it's ready for sharing. It's online. Multiple people can work on it at once. I can actually be modifying the forms and updating them while it locks the forms in a production environment. So as a programmer, I can be modifying forms. Somebody can be entering data at the same time. Those two do not conflict. Then I send my changes into production, and the next day, everything is in production, which is really, really, really robust system. It can send emails, survey reminders, database alerts, and it also connects to other resources via APIs, and you can build a ton of custom things. So time and effort, kind of a learning curve for RedCap. Most people who can do things themselves would find themselves in the first build or the basic features, which is really still better than Excel. It's good enough to just do that for your research study. If you want to do some advanced features, please do that. Customizations, not that hard. There is like a question mark next to everything when you're working on a database, and there's a little explanation of how to use it, an example right in there. And then now we're talking about APIs, and then we talk about a little more complicated stuff. But honestly, if you're just in those first two sections, you're good. So that's what a screen would look like. As you can see, the record IDs of the patients are right there, and these are all the forms that they're collecting. Of course, this is a nice example when everything is nice and green, meaning all the data has been collected, but in reality, you could have red bubbles where the data is incomplete or unverified or whatever. So, but as I said, anyone can learn how to use it. This is what this project setup looks like. On one side, you have the project and all its features. You can have, it's a little blurry, I apologize. So you can have surveys, you can have longitudinal data, you can have pre-assigned IDs, you can assign IDs to the participants yourself. You can have a randomization feature, you don't have to. And then on the other side, you have basically your navigation bar where you design your project, you do your data collection, applications, reports, and dashboards, and help, and there's also help and training on the bottom with FAQs, which you can open up at any moment. There are tons of training videos. They're very, very short, and they're absolutely wonderful. So obviously, this has a lot of navigation things, looks kind of like scary and complicated. It's really for people who build. People who just do the data collection and maybe reporting, this menu gets much, much shorter and less scary. Just to show you as an example, this would be how we would set up different patient visits. So once you set those visits up, they will appear as columns on your patient dashboard. If we go back here, I believe you can see how the visits are screening, baseline, and so forth. So this is how those would be set up here. Then you can design your forms any way you'd like. You can just do a very, very simple form, test A, test result one, A, test result B, then second test, or you can make it look very, very nice on the bottom as a table. Then we have, so this is a regular form. When a data entry person opens the form, they can add edit records, they can look at the dashboard, they see this, you're right now in this record ID 3, and this is what we've been collecting. So right now we're in that specific instrument. This is what the data collection looks like for a person who is entering the data, or they're doing an interview with a participant. However, if we would like the participant to fill it out themselves, it looks a little different. These are the same 3 questions, but they don't see all of that navigation stuff. They only see this as a survey. So what I did forget to say that also nicely, RedCap does, how am I doing on time? Okay. So it does e-consents now, they're consenting. It has a special feature for e-consents. I did not include it here. I'm not sure whether some countries have it approved, other place ethics and regulatory boards do not, so I did not include it, but we love it, especially during COVID. It became very popular. People could not come in for their visits, so we would consent them online, and it actually captures their signature, and it becomes an official consent document, which it's stored within RedCap as a PDF, and you can print it out, or you can, it becomes an official consent document. So just to recap, that data management is a foundational pillar of successful clinical research. It's a proactive system. You have to constantly keep working on it. It's not, oh. I'll be quick. I'll end in 10 minutes. No. And you don't have to. So we don't want to be doing all the data cleaning at the end, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. We're like, what did we mean by this? So its mission to ensure that final data is true and accurate and represents what we really want to represent, and that the data is reliable, and we can replicate the results later. And it's really high quality data, gives us reliable results, and leads to safe, effective treatments and interventions. And at this point, I just want to leave you with this quote. And
one question regarding anonymity and confidentiality. If there are any concerns in, the question is about RedCap and how to avoid this in data management.
I'm sorry, Carol.
Is it possible to fill the data anonymously? Even the researcher would know nothing about the participant? And what about confidentiality if that is not known? Thank you.
Yes, so ultimately, somebody has to know something about the participant, because if you can assign patient IDs, and you can only enter all the data under the specific patient IDs, right? So you don't have to put any names, you don't have to put dates of birth. You can put age, for example, instead of the date of birth. And that's, but if you want it completely anonymously, there is a way to do it in the sense that, for example, you want to send a survey, right, to a participant, and you don't want to know anything about those people. So there is a way to create a public survey, and you can even publish that link on any website. And any person who just clicks on that link, if you don't ask for any identifying information, they're just going to complete your questionnaire, and you're going to receive the data, but you're not going to know who they are. The issue with that could be, and maybe that's okay for the study, is that people then, same person can complete it multiple times, and you're not going to ever know. So it doesn't, it can look for duplicates then, because there's nothing to identify a person on. So if somebody keeps saying, keep clicking the same link and completing the data.
Thank you for your presentation. It definitely opened the new horizons for me, definitely. Two questions. First, about the red cap. So you can collect qualitative and quantitative data.
Yes, you can. Quality, you can actually even, there's a file storage capability. If you have like pictures or anything like that, you can literally upload them into the patient record and you can open and look at them. Some people, you can only have so much space, so you can't really do imaging data or anything like that. You can also, if somebody sends you like a PDF, you can upload it into a patient record. Also, for what else? I'm sorry, what else?
So
The
qualitative and
The qualitative part, it's what you enter. I mean, yes, you can ask them, there's like a whole question which gives you this much space to type your text in, but it's still going to be text. It doesn't translate your text into, it doesn't code it. But
This is most the kind of feedback of the data collected, right?
yes,
Okay.
Not the actual.
it doesn't process.
The study thing.
It's not exactly, Irma, it's not processing. So I think there's software that processes. We don't do as much qualitative data, to be honest, but there's software that I think actually can code qualitative data for you and we can look into it. But this would be just to collect the data, not
Okay.
to code it.
Thank you. And the second question is about the everyday life of data manager. So how does your timeline look like on one project?
Oh, we don't have one project. Big project.
Yeah, thank you.
In terms of how long it takes to do anything. Well, if it's one form, I can go live with my project in one day. Because you just develop your form, well, and then again, if your form, how many questions does your form have? You don't want to have a form that has 100 questions because then you're kind of lost in it. So you usually break them down. Like we put demographics in one form, then we put, I don't know, questionnaire about their lifestyle in another form. And by form, I mean, like, it's, you know, how you collect stuff. Think of a form as a questionnaire. You would have your questionnaires on separate pages. This is what the forms are like. But ultimately, when you have a record, it's all in one record. If you extract your data, it's all going to be in one line, just like Excel.
Our goal is to have a data manager involved from the start to the end of the project.
Yes.
So just like you would have a statistician or a researcher or whatever. Sorry. That's our plan. This is like, yeah. So the data manager, as Lily said, should be involved in the start. They work closely with the statistician in the study and the research team. You know, there's the build, then their job transitions some to the actual monitoring and the quality assurance, although the initial build is never the final build. There's always changes that are made over the course of a study once you're live and realizing. And then at the end of the study, as Lily said, then their job transitions again to data lock, et cetera, and then preparing the data for an upload, a submission. So they're involved. When we design studies, we budget our data managers in the entire time. You know, what effort they're required for sometimes ebbs and flows over the course of the project, depending on how complicated things are. But that's our goal, is to have them involved the entire time.
I don't know if I want this or not, but so thank you for that. That was actually really helpful. I'm wondering if you could just comment to the groups about two issues around data management. One of them is when you use things like REDCap, and let's say you're working remotely, let's say in a prison where you can't sort of have all these things. Can you comment about the apps for sort of, you know, basically collecting the data and the trials and pitfalls of that? That's question number one. And then the other one is that I have seen some of these databases like REDCap have these internal, like almost like stat running things to do quality checks behind the scenes. And can you talk about that so that you don't have to physically always have a person running the SAS, that it's being done so that you can call up people right away and say, okay, this form is not good, or for QI stuff, those two things.
All right, so the first question, about, I was lost, I was thinking the QR. Yes, being offline. So actually, it's possible. And, it's called, not MyCap, but something else. I'll tell you in a second. It's on my phone. So there's an offline app where you can load up all your stuff. You collect data on, devices that are offline. And then when you get back to a place where there's internet, you upload it onto the server. And you have to realize that this could be used in many countries at the same time, the same database, because it's an online system. So it all goes onto one server. So usually a university or an institution will have a designated server. It's secure. It's behind a firewall where they have their AppCap servers installed, and that's where all the data are sent. This is where everything, all the data, the database is built, and everything is backed up every day. They're extremely detailed audit trails. I can go back to the beginning and see who designed which form. There were times when somebody told me, oh, this was deleted accidentally. I'm like, it was not accidental. I can tell you who deleted it. So
Yeah, that was actually my question as well.
special of my data disappeared. No, it didn't. Somebody deleted it.
That was
So-
actually my question as well, because